Why, hello, friends. I think I ought to start today's episode off with a preemptory "You're welcome," because I'm about to read to you perhaps the greatest opening to any novel ever. If not the best, it's certainly up there. This is coming from The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, as you know, one of the greatest books that C.S. Lewis ever wrote, and he's one of the greatest authors. So it's worth a little bit of our attention. This is a masterclass in how to open a novel. It's going to be a little bit more on the literature side than the theological side today. It's so good. So, this book, if you remember, we're introduced to Eustace. This is the same book where he turns into a dragon and he has to rip off his skin. Finds it useless, so the lion Aslan has to rip it off for him. It's fantastic, and you come to love Eustace by the end of the book. But in the beginning, you love to hate him. There's no other way to put it, and it's all because of these opening paragraphs. Just the first 3 paragraphs I'll read for you. And man, is it so good. So I'm going to read it, and we'll break it down a bit. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. His parents called him Eustace Clarence, and masters called him Scrub. I can't tell you how his friends spoke to him, for he had none. He didn't call his father and mother, but Harold and Alberta. They were very up-to-date and advanced people. They were vegetarians, non-smokers, and teetotalers, and wore a special kind of underclothes. You get a little bit of C.S. Lewis's vices and thrown in here. Those are exactly the things he loves: meat, smoking, and wine. In their house, there was very little furniture and very few clothes on beds, and the windows were always open. Eustace Clarence liked animals, especially beetles if they were dead and pinned on a card. He liked books if they were books of information and had pictures of grain elevators or of fat foreign children doing exercises in model schools. Eustace Clarence disliked his cousins, the 4 pensives, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. But he was quite glad when he heard that Edmund and Lucy were coming to stay, for deep down inside him he liked bossing and bullying, and though he was a puny little person who couldn't have stood up even to Lucy, let alone Edmund, in a fight, he knew that there are dozens of ways to give people a bad time if you are in your own home and they are only visitors. Like I said, you can see all the things which C.S. Lewis likes turned on their head. Eustace Clarence Scrub, a very clearly reprehensible name, should have never existed. And then he says that he had no friends. We get more information as to why. First of all, he didn't respect thy father and mother. He called them Harold and Alberta instead of father and mother. It's like one of my pet peeves. I can't stand it. My son, in fact, he started to call me bro because he has a cousin who really calls everyone bro, and he thought that it's kind of a clever thing, and so he tried it on me, and he found out that that's not appropriate in no uncertain terms. So, yeah, we're going to put that to one side, maybe circle back to the father-mother thing, because a lot of his particular offenses, I think, spring from his father and mother, but they were very up-to-date, advanced people, vegetarians, non-smokers, and teetotalers. So to Lewis, the carnal pleasures are to be enjoyed. They're given to us by God. He wasn't some Puritan or some Gnostic who thought that anything that had to do with the flesh was evil. Instead, he embraced the joys of life. He found God in the pint and the pipe. And I think that's exactly fitting. It's one of the reasons I love being Catholic, is it's almost part of my religion now. To rejoice in the things that God gave us, the good things. But there's some people who they value their health more than they do living. I'm thinking of this man who's on YouTube. I want to say Brian Johnson is his name. Someone will correct me in the comments, but his whole goal is to live literally forever. He wants to keep his aging body, I think he's in his 40s, young, by all biometric standards. He wants to be the equivalent age of like an 18-year-old, which I think he's actually at. He's aging in reverse right now because he's investing millions into his health, and is the most biometrically tracked individual on the earth. Very fascinating person, but I think very wrong-headed, because you're valuing the physical form of life more than the spiritual dimension of life, if that makes sense. Um, there's almost this fear of dying, which is so overwhelming, particularly because I think he doesn't believe in an afterlife. And then that becomes kind of an all-consuming project, just to live until the point when science hypothetically progresses to where we can live forever and maybe introduce like biometric mechanisms into our body, become cyborgs, and upload our consciousness into some cloud somewhere and live forever. And it's a very grim, dystopian, like anti-human philosophy. But that's what it is. And this is, I think they're kind of that same breed. And even in their house, you can see how their parents keep the house. Everything is neat and tidy. I wish I could show you my study. It is an absolute mess behind the camera, and that's because I'm actually living. I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got books that I like to read, I've got things I'm trying to write, I've got side projects, I'm making wine, there's wine stuff everywhere. It's a mess. And it's because I've got my hands in so many different things. I'm really trying to suck the marrow out of the bones of life. But when you're straitjacketed into this pristine living, this type A type living, it can be stifling. And C.S. Lewis paints this picture so well, in so few words too. He then goes on to say that Eustace Clarence likes animals, but in this perverse way again. C.S. Lewis was a great admirer of nature, would go on long walks, but he did that because it was specifically alive. The trees, him and Tolkien thought, were more than just wood. They're these almost mythical creatures, like dryads, and they've got personalities to them. And exploring nature in that way is beautiful, but he's doing it in this sterile way, pinning dead beetles onto cardstock. Awful. He liked books, but only books about information, not books about stories like C.S. Lewis loves, like we love. That's not to say that, of course, you can't read to learn information. That's all very good too, but you also have to exercise your imagination. Yeah, deep down inside, he liked bossing and bullying. It was a little person who couldn't have stood up even to Lucy. The people who try to control their environments the most are the ones who have the least control over themselves. They feel insecure. They're not strong people, so they have to exert their strength on every little thing that they possibly can. So I'm a hospice nurse, and I have some patients who, as they lose control over their body, over their autonomy, over their mind, certain things become very important to them. Whereas they used to not care about where the newspaper was placed every morning, or where the clock was, or what meals they were being served, because they had all these other things that they had control over and they felt secure in themselves. Now, as their body starts declining, their range of influence shrinks, and those things become so important to them. You can almost imagine Eustace shriveled up like one of these patients who just really needs to control what he can. And in his own home, that happens to be the children that we love, Peter, Susan, Edmund, Lucy. And he's determined to give them a bad time. Well, little does he know that, they're also capable of giving him a hard time. And so that's where the book kicks off, is this back and forth, this little, as children do, that they're playing their antagonism. It's so great to read about, and their character arcs and their character development throughout the novel is just remarkable. It's worth a reread. I need to get around to doing that, but for now, that's going to have to suffice. I've got a million other things that I have to get to, and I'm sure you do too. God bless and take care.